our panel today. Kris Ferranti, partner at Sherman & Sterling.
Handle the expansion rights topic, and I think it's important to put this in context. A tenant is leasing a portion of a multi-tenanted building. It's a percentage of the building, obviously not the whole thing. The tenant here either expects or is uncertain about its future growth. Putting people in different buildings is just an operational nightmare, and it's not conducive to a lively and energetic work environment, to say the least. It's not ideal to a growing company to house personnel in separate locations, unless that's being done for some strategic purpose. From a landlord's perspective, if space is available or expected to be available, this is a valuable concession offered to entice a tenant to come to the building. But it is also a right that landlords typically loathe to give because it potentially holds up space. It requires a landlord to work around these rights as it's negotiating other space in the building in the future. As such, significant leverage by the tenant is typically needed. Leverage could be in the form of just overall percentage of the building the tenant is currently taking. So if the tenant is leasing most of the building or a significant percentage of it, then that in and of itself could be enough leverage. Leverage could also be gained by just the overall creditworthiness of the tenant. So a tenant that has substantial net worth is a tenant that any landlord would want to take more space in the building. Lastly, leverage could be gained by virtue of when the tenant makes its request for these rights and whether the landlord is desperate to fill a vacancy. These rights should be requested by tenants early on during the request for proposal stage and the term sheet stage. Expansion rights usually manifest in three different forms. First is a pure expansion right, where we identify other space in the building, and when my right to it as tenant matures, the landlord is just obligated to lease it to me. Second is a right of first offer, or ROFO. There is no certainty of delivery of additional space. Only if space becomes available, the landlord is putting it out into the market, will I as tenant have the rights to lease it, but I get first dibs at it. The third is a right of first refusal, or ROFR. Similar to the ROFO, there's no certainty that I'll be able to lease additional space. Only if the space becomes available and landlord markets it to third parties and actually finds a willing third-party tenant for that space, I can have the right to take that deal. In a competitive market where there are multiple space options, the third party is unlikely to expend the time and money to strike a deal to only have it lost. And for these reasons, we really do see ROFRs because of this chilling effect, and much more common are ROFOs. Whether the expansion option is a pure expansion right or a ROFO or ROFR, in any case, there will be a number of conditions and limitations to the tenant's ability to actually be able to exercise the right. These conditions and limitations tend to be heavily negotiated. Tenants that are able to negotiate for a pure expansion right typically are the tenants that have the greatest leverage. And so usually you would see not only pure expansion rights, but also expansion rights together with a ROFO or a ROFR right. Nothing stopping the tenant from approaching the landlord at any time about vacant space. And so even if the stars don't align, and at the very moment in which the tenant needs the space, the expansion right is now available to it, the tenant can always approach the landlord, and the landlord will typically be more than willing to lease any available space to an existing tenant. Kris Ferranti. I'm a partner at Sherman & Sterling. Sherman is a full-service global law firm. Our real estate group has extensive experience in all areas of commercial leasing. We represent landlords and tenants in preparing and negotiating every type of commercial lease, including space leases, ground leases, subleases, and any other structured transaction involving leases. Thank you.